Following is a forum that was held as part of the Socialism 2025 conference in Chicago over July 3 to 6, discussing the repression of anti-war voices in Vladimir Putin's Russia. It was moderated by Suzi Weissman, who is an acclaimed journalist, editorial board member of Against the Current and Critic, host of the Jacobin Radio podcast, and author of Victor Serge, The Course is Set on Hope. The forum features contributions from Russian socialist Ilya Butratkis, Ksenia Kagarlitskaya, who is the daughter of jailed Russian Marxist Boris Kagarlitsky, and Grusha Galeva, managing editor of Russian anti-war website Postler. It also features Simon Pirani, who is a historian and researcher on Russia and Ukraine. You can read Green Left's extensive coverage of the campaign to free Boris Kagarlitsky and other jailed anti-war dissidents in Russia, as well as our coverage on Russia's invasion of Ukraine at greenleft.org.au. You can also become a supporter from as little as $5 a month at greenleft.org.au/support to help keep this project going. Now, on with the forum.
Okay, everyone, we're going to start. Thank you very much for coming, and all of those of you who are online. I hope you can hear me. I'm Suzi Weissman, and I am loosely representing the Boris Kagarlitsky International Solidarity Campaign, and I'm now saying that they are also sponsoring this panel. I'm good. So this panel is going to examine Putin's repression of critical voices, those who have publicly opposed his war of aggression against Ukraine. Boris Kagarlitsky, the well-known Marxist critic. Can everybody hear me all right? We don't have a mic. Okay. The Marxist critic of Putin's regime is currently serving 5 years in a penal colony for justifying terrorism, stemming from a satirical comment that he made on social media about the Crimean bridge explosion. While his case has drawn international attention, there's many other left-wing critics who remain imprisoned in obscurity, often held in abysmal conditions. And from the time of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, now 3.5 years ago, Putin has vastly increased repression in Russia. In this same period, the Putin regime has become a fully authoritarian dictatorship and has revived elements of Stalin's playbook, not the scale of repression, but the arbitrary and often absurd charges used to repress critical, independent thought. The Boris Kagarlitsky International Solidarity Campaign, along with the other human rights organizations that our panelists will likely discuss, is tracking persecutions, raising money for prisoners and their families, organizing letter writing, and helping to pay for legal expenses. These organizations are fighting for freedom for all anti-war prisoners in the Russian Federation and the occupied territories, many of them completely unknown, all unjustly imprisoned, often in life-threatening conditions. Like Boris Kagarlitsky, they've been charged and sentenced under this catch-all legislation designed to advance Russian values and crush all opposition to the war. In these cases, verdicts are decided in advance and acquittals are non-existent. Kagarlitsky was charged with justification of terrorism. Others are charged with things like bringing discredit upon the armed forces, extremism, or things like public display of banned symbols. You may have read of people being arrested for accidentally wearing the colors of the Ukraine, say blue jeans and a yellow shirt, or whether it's deliberate or inadvertent, or for playing suspect music, classic poetry deemed subversive, comments carelessly made, and then denounced, and more. These laws are used against opponents of the invasion of Ukraine, whether they reside in Russia, are citizens of the occupied territories in Ukraine, even Ukrainian prisoners of war. As pressure builds for an end to the war, 11 Russian political prisoners, including Kagarlitsky, Asad Miftakhov, and others have yesterday, July 3rd, written an open letter to world leaders calling for a mass release of Russian political prisoners and Ukrainian civil hostages held by Russia, some 10,000 people, as part of any peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. This call should be our demand as well. Freedom for all political prisoners as part of our solidarity work. In the period ahead, our solidarity must be loud and spread wide. Freedom for all political prisoners. You'll hear more from our distinguished panel, who will spotlight the silence left in Russia, prisoners of conscience, resisting war and authoritarianism from within and in exile. They include Boris Kagarlitsky's daughter, Ksenia Kagarlitskaya, who's joining us from Montenegro, founder of the International Campaign for Russia's Political Prisoners Freedom Zone. We'll hear a recorded message from Boris Kagarlitsky himself from his cell at Torzhok, penal colony number 4. Historian and activist Simon Perani behind us, joining us from central Italy somewhere. And exiled Russian left activist, historian, political theorist, and scholar right here on my left, Ilya Budraitskis. And I'm going to introduce them more fully before they speak. And there will also be ample time for discussion from the audience. Finally, we encourage you to join our work. And we're circulating a sign-up sheet. You can check out freeboris.info to see what kind of work we're doing. Thank you. And now let's begin. So first, our first speaker is Simon Perani. And Simon is an historian, an activist, an energy researcher writing on Russia and Ukraine. His latest book that will come out in September, I believe, is called Final Speeches to the Court. You can also read his Change in Putin's Russia, which I used numerous years teaching. And he blogs at peoplenature.org. Simon, floor is yours.
Okay, Suzi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So thank you very much for inviting me. I had been visiting and writing about Russia and Ukraine for many years when the war broke out and got involved in efforts to support comrades and friends in both Ukraine and Russia. In the summer of 2022, we learned of a new group that had been formed, Solidarity Zone, to support those who'd been arrested for taking direct action against the war, mainly by firebombing military recruitment centres. A group of us in the UK started translating their fundraising appeals and other material. The firebombings are done when the offices are closed. They're aimed at damaging property, not persons, and this became a comparatively common form of protest. There were 100 such actions, more than 100 such actions in the first year after the invasion of Ukraine. Solidarity Zone saw that those who were detained and their families needed support, and particularly lawyers, if lawyers could be found, straight away, and provided that support. Following this at a distance from the UK, we were especially struck by some of the courageous statements made by these young people when they were brought to trial for these actions. Furthermore, similar speeches were made in court by people who had not engaged in such dramatic protests, but had simply denounced the war out loud, say at a political event, at a online or wherever, and had then been arrested. These people are victims of a general clampdown on democratic rights that Suzi's mentioned, and I'm sure that our speakers from Russia will talk more about. Earlier this year, with our friends in the European Network for Solidarity with Ukraine, we decided to publish a collection of these speeches, which Suzi has kindly mentioned. I'm indeed editing it, but I think that's not the story. The story is in the speeches themselves, which we're going to gather together in English translation. There's 9 of these speeches, and we're also going to include 2 statements from people who appeared in court but made the statements elsewhere. That is Kirill Butilin, who, as far as we know, was the first person to make one of these firebombing protests and put out a social media message, and Savery Morozov from southern Russia, who's a young man who was eligible for conscription and who denounced the war at the conscription commission. So what I'm going to do now is I'll talk first about these speeches, which I've gone through and thought about, and also then say a bit more about the general picture of political repression as I see it. So about the speeches, some things that struck me. The first is the deeply moral tone that many of these protesters who've obviously been prepared to sacrifice an enormous amount just to make these speeches, the deeply moral approach they have. So if we take Igor Paskar, for example, he firebombed the office of the Federal Security Services in the town where he lived, and then stood there and waited to be arrested, and was arrested and very badly tortured. When he got to court, he said, quote, "Do I regret what has happened? Yes. Perhaps I'd wanted my life to turn out differently, but I acted according to my conscience, and my conscience remains clear." And perhaps I should explain, when he talks about his life turning out differently, so he's now serving, I think it's a 15-year jail sentence. The second thing that struck me about all these speeches, every single one of them, is that they were addressed to the population, not to the government. So Alexei Rozhkov, for example, firebombed a military recruitment center in the town where he lives, was released from detention after an initial hearing, which was a unusual result of good work by lawyers, fled to Kyrgyzstan, and was then kidnapped, presumably by the security forces, and returned to Russia for trial. And he said, quote, "I have no doubt that millions of my fellow Russians, women and men, young and old, are opposed to the war too, and like me are convinced that the war is not a solution, but a dead end. But they have no way, without risking ending up behind bars, to do anything to be heard." And a third example, I think, is Bogdan Ziza, a Ukrainian, an artist, who splashed blue and yellow paint, the colors of the Ukrainian flag, on government offices in Crimea, which has been occupied since 2014. And he filmed himself doing it. And in that film, he said, quote, "I address myself above all to Crimeans and to Russians." And in court, he said that his action was a cry from the heart to those who were and are afraid, just as I was afraid, to speak out about the war. The third thing that struck me about these statements from these 11 people was their very different starting points. So on the central issue of the war, their views range from pacifist to defeatist. If we take Sasha Skochelenko, an artist jailed in St. Petersburg for writing anti-war messages on labels in a supermarket, and she was fortunately freed as a result of a prisoner exchange. But when she was in court, she didn't know she was going to be freed, and she said, quote, "Yes, I'm a pacifist. Pacifists believe life to be the highest value of all. They believe that every conflict can be resolved by peaceful means. I cannot kill even a spider," unquote. And Alexei Gorinov, actually, who was a very prominent political prisoner, also expressed himself in court very much in terms of pacifism, quoted Lev Tolstoy and so on. Now, we can contrast this with the attitude of Daria Kazirova, a St. Petersburg student who was jailed for laying flowers at the statue of Taras Shevchenko, the Ukrainian national poet, because in court she made clear that for her the central issue is Ukraine's right to self-determination, and she clearly justified Ukrainians asserting that right by force of arms. She said the war is a criminal intrusion on Ukraine's sovereignty. Ukraine does not need a big brother. It will fight anyone who tries to invade, and so on. Another example, Ruslan Siddiqui, an anarchist who tried to inflict tangible damage on the Russian armed forces by detonating bombs on railway tracks, which derailed a train taking munitions to the front. And he justified this as a military action on Ukraine's side. He said he thinks of himself as a partisan who should be classified as a prisoner of war. Now, the final example I'll give, who also made a very clear statement of hope for Russia's defeat, was Alexander Skorbov. He's 68 years old. He was first detained in 1978 in Soviet times and tried for activity in the dissident movement and subject to forcible psychiatric treatment. And then this year, 47 years later, he was again in court on charges related to things he said about the war. And in court, he spelled out three principles of his political organization, the Free Russia Forum. First, the unconditional return to Ukraine of all its internationally recognized territories occupied by Russia, including Crimea. Second, support for all those fighting for this goal, including Russian citizens who joined the Ukrainian armed forces. And thirdly, support for any form of war, this is a quote, against Putin's tyranny inside Russia, including armed resistance, but excluding terrorist attacks on civilians. So now I just want to make some general points about the scale of the repression, following on from what Suzi has already said. In this book that we're working on, I hope and propose that we'll use the phrase the 21st century gulag. And I think this is fully justified. Memorial Support Political Prisoners, which is one of the main non-governmental organizations supporting political prisoners, has a list with more than 3,000 names on it. The last time there were comparable numbers of political prisoners was in the mid-1970s under Brezhnev. And as Suzi has mentioned, in addition to the people detained in Russia, there are many, many prisoners from the occupied territories of Ukraine. And in their cases, there's a great deal of uncertainty about the numbers. So the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group, in a submission to the International Criminal Court, has identified more than 5,000 civilian victims of, quote, enforced disappearances from the occupied territories. These people may be in detention or dead. In most cases, their families do not know. Two Ukrainian human rights groups, MENA and Center for Civil Liberties, in 2023 compiled a list of 585 arrested civilians who were in detention or missing, detained by reason of their political and civic activity in the occupied territories. For example, local government representatives, former military personnel, volunteers, activists, and journalists. A group that more is known about because of the strength of civil society organization is the political prisoners from Crimea. The Crimean Human Rights Group currently registers 265 of these, many from the Crimean Tatar community. And then, of course, there are also thousands of civilian prisoners who've been moved from the so-called People's Republics of Donetsk and Lugansk, tried under those very arbitrary legal systems, and then transferred to the Russian prison system. Now, the very last general point I want to make is that in the world we now live in, with militarism and authoritarianism on the rise, the anti-war protests in Russia have international significance. And I don't want to talk about that in depth, but I think it's worth making a comparison. In the UK, very far from facing the sort of dictatorship that rules Russia, or even the threats to democracy you face in the US now, nevertheless, the criminalization of anti-war protest in the UK follows a very similar Kafkaesque ideological logic to what we see in Russia. So Palestine Action, which organizes direct action protests against arms deliveries to Israel, is threatened with a ban under anti-terror legislation. Singers who've denounced the genocide in Gaza are investigated by the police. The parallels with some Russian cases are striking. Now, the very last point is what can be done in Western countries about these political prisoners. First, we can raise awareness, particularly in left-wing circles, where the influence of campism remains strong. By campism, I mean the idea that Russia is not really an imperialist power and doesn't deserve the same condemnation as the US or Israel. It's very difficult from Western countries to do letter writing. That's another very standard form of support for political prisoners, possible for Russian speakers, but not for others in practice. But we can send money to people who organize parcels and letters. And I've already mentioned some of the campaign groups. Memorial is the biggest and most well-known. There's also Overde Info, which has been doing fantastic work over the last 3 years on this subject. I've mentioned Solidarity Zone, and supporting prisoners from Ukraine, the Crimea Human Rights Group, and the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group, which also has its roots in Memorial, are organizations that fully deserve all our support. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. That was excellent. So, and welcome to the rest of you. There is a sign-up sheet that's going around. So if you want to get involved in more activities, Solidarity, I think, which is incredibly urgent and important. We're going to now switch to Ilya Budraitskis. He's on my left right here. He's an historian, political theorist, activist. He's formerly based in Moscow. He left Russia shortly after the invasion of Ukraine, landing finally as a scholar at risk at UC Berkeley, where he has now joined the sociology department. Ilya podcasts, and if you speak Russian, he also conducts classes online, and he writes regularly for many publications, political and cultural websites. He was a founding member of the recently dissolved Russian socialist movement. Elias was also a member of it. His 2022 book called Dissident Among Dissidents, Ideology, Politics, and the Left in Post-Soviet Russia was published by Verso and shortlisted for the Deutscher Prize. His forthcoming book, co-authored with Ilya Medvedev, is called Russia's New Imperialism, Capital and Ideology, and look for that in the next, year. Okay, Ilya, here you go. Come over here.
We have to physically point the camera at you so comrades abroad can see.
Hi, Simon. Hi, Ksenia. So probably I want to continue with what Simon already started to describe, the scale of political repressions in Russia, and as a part of the general transformation of Russian political regime after the start of full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So the first thing, the numbers. So it's really hard to get a proper full information of how many political prisoners you have now in Russia, especially because work of any human rights organizations in Russia now is nearly impossible. So, for example, Memorial that was mentioned by Simon was recognized as a terrorist or extremist organization some years ago. So it's not possible to for them to work in Russia and to follow all the criminal cases in the country, but somehow, according to their calculations, up to now there are about 2,000 political prisoners, like fully recognized as the political prisoners. But they believe that in reality it could be much more. Like, for example, another human rights organization, Первый отдел, believe that there are almost 20,000 people who are under the persecution for political cases under one reason or another. And actually, that is already much bigger than in the late Soviet Union. So it's not already on that level as during Great Terror, during Stalin's repressions, but the dynamics of those repressions is quite scary. So, for example, according to the same memorials data, in October 2023, there were about 800 fully recognized political prisoners in Russia, and for now it's already 2,000. Yes, so the numbers are growing quite fast, as well as the repressive legislation. I will tell about it a bit later. So, so what is this legislation is about? Why these people are arrested under which accusations? I will try to count like various elements of this repressive legislation. So the first one is so-called foreign agents. So for now, there are about 1,000 people in Russia or outside Russia who being recognized as the foreign agents individually, and also there are collective foreign agents. For example, Russian Socialist Movement, my political group, which was labeled as a foreign agent a year ago. So what does it mean? So currently it means full ban of any public activity. So you can publish anything anywhere in your personal like blog, in a paper. You can't publish and distribute your book and so on. Then you can teach anywhere, not just in the public institutions, but also in private universities at school. So it's not allowed at all. And basically, you can't get any income in Russia. So opportunities for any economic activity in the country are heavily restricted. So after the first violation of this law, you will be fined, and after second, you will go to jail for up for 2 years. Now in Russian Parliament, they're discussing a new amendment to this law, which allows to arrest person after first violation. So what violation means? So for example, if you you have to report every quarter of the year of all your incomes, of all your financial situation, and if you didn't make it in time, that's a violation. And there are many others. So second part of such repressive legislation is so-called discreditation of the Russian army, or distributing fakes about Russian army, which means basically that any criticism of the war, including naming a special military operation, the war, could lead you up to 10 years in prison. So next is so-called justification of terrorism. And actually, Boris Kagarlitsky was arrested exactly for this. I don't want to go too much into it. Then participation in so-called undesirable organizations and extremist movements, extremist organizations. What are these organizations? For example, LGBT was recognized as the international extremist movement. So if you, for example, use publicly a rainbow flag somewhere in Russia, you will be arrested and prosecuted according to this law. Then state treason, and that is also very popular reason for being arrested, which quite often apply to Ukrainians, civil Ukrainians in occupied territories of the country. Then deserters. So up to now, there are about 8,000 criminal cases in Russia for leaving the army, and the general number of deserters is about 50,000. Okay, so who are these people who are being arrested for all of these reasons? So that could be like political activists, journalists, lawyers. So it's very dangerous now in Russia to be a lawyer of any people who are under investigation for this political legislation. And there are a lot of common people, just people who made some comments about current situation, who made some comments about the war and about politics in general. It's interesting that the number of teenagers who are being arrested under this repressive legislation is significantly growing. So, for example, recently 14 years old guy was arrested because he wrote something in his social media. Politically, those are most liberals, various type of the left, anarchists, socialists, or even some Stalinists who even supported the war but criticized the government for like some other things. So, for instance, Sergei Udaltsov, a well-known Russian Stalinist politician, was arrested almost 2 years ago, and he's still in prison. So, next important thing is that you have tortures not as some incident, but as a rule, as a massive practice in on all stages of investigation, prosecution. So that could happen definitely in prison. That could happen on the level of investigation, and that could happen in extra judicial way, like without any like official prosecution. Of course, most of people who were subject of those tortures, they came from Ukraine, so many of them are Ukrainian citizens, Ukrainian prisoners of war, or citizens of Russian Federation in such regions as Northern Caucasus and occupied Crimea. So I don't want to go into details of these tortures, but the most favorite are such as rape by a bottle. So they rape especially men by a bottle. Then they use electric shock quite a lot. And also, of course, create unbearable conditions in prison, and that's the case for especially many people, many political prisoners who are sick, who have bad health conditions, such as Alexander Skobov or Alexei Gorinov, as was explained by Simon. So probably the last thing that I wanted to say, that all that I just described is a part of some bigger program, of some bigger strategy. And the strategy is leading to the creation of the homogeneous society in Russia, where any sort of dissent is impossible, and where so-called traditional values, which means the values of patriarchal family, authoritarian leadership, and imperial superiority of Russia in the international arena, unites all members of this of this community. So basically, it's a very ambiguous project of transformation of the whole country into some fascist society. So probably the last thing to say that just 2 days ago, a letter signed by Boris Kagarlitsky and 10 other well-known Russian political prisoners was published. It was quite widely distributed. And the main idea in this letter that some massive swap of political prisoners is really needed, especially for those political prisoners who suffer the most. So that's exactly what was explained by Simon. But there are like thousands and thousands of those political prisoners who are absolutely unknown, who have no voice, and our duty is to talk about the real scale of political repressions in Russia, the place of this repressive machine within this bigger totalitarian project of totalitarian transformation, and to call for release of all political prisoners in Russia. Thank you.
Thanks to Ilya. And we're going to move now to Ksenia Kagarlitskaya. She's on Zoom, but I just wanted to say with regard to the charge, of being slapped as a foreign agent, which Ilya just spoke about and said that part of it is that you can't engage in any economic activity. And this became quite Kafkaesque, and maybe Ksenia will explain further, but when Boris was first charged, and he was acquitted with a fine, and the fine was 600,000 rubles, and that was raised within an hour on public crowdfunding. But then when he tried to pay his fine, he was already a foreign agent, and so the bank couldn't take any transaction from him. And then, I mean, he finally managed.
Excuse me, clarification. It happened because he also was a terrorist.
Oh, yes.
He was recognized as a terrorist.
Thank you.
And that prevented him
from paying the money. But then, of course, they said in the appeal that he didn't pay his fine, but of course he did finally. So you just start to see, and that's why I said it's a page out of Stalin's playbook, because if you followed the purges, this is nowhere near that scale. But what you do have is people being locked up and shut away on the most absurd channels. Okay, so Ksenia is Boris Kagarlitsky's daughter, and she is living in Montenegro, and she's the founder and organizer of the International Festival in support of political prisoners called Freedom Zone. We're really happy to have her here. And she has something quite special for us, which is a recording she was able to get from her father from the penal colony. And let me just say, we all know who Boris Kagarlitsky is, but he is no stranger to being arrested. This is his probably fourth, maybe even fifth, but he spent time in Brezhnev's prison during the Soviet period, also under Yeltsin. That was quite a terrible one, and then twice, at least, under Putin. And he, as we know, or should know, was arrested in 2023 and sentenced to 5 years, which he is serving. And last year, the Daniel Singer Foundation recognized him as our very first prisoner of conscience. Okay, Ksenia, it's over to you. And thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having this event. This is really important to speak worldwide about the problem of political prisoners in Russia, and not only in Russia. All around the world, this trend is going on. There are more political prisoners in other countries, not only in Russia. I think I should start with this special surprise from my father. This recording was made especially for this event. So it was made directly from prison in English. So I think, I hope it's going to, I have this microphone, I think it's a good one. So I hope you'll hear it in a good quality. So let me start. Sorry.
Dear friends and colleagues, there is good news. And the good news is that I can communicate with you, I can talk to you even being in prison. And I'm very happy that it may happen. However, there is bad news. The bad news, of course, is that there are plenty of political prisoners around the world. No less than 10,000 political prisoners in Russia alone. We also estimate about 5,000 political prisoners in Ukraine. And that also tells us that it's very hard to find any good guys on either side in the current global conflict. The world as we see it now doesn't look very nice place. And actually, what we see is that there is a tremendous reaction which is developing throughout the world, which is becoming a real threat, not only to the progress achieved in the recent 100 years, probably, but for the very existence of humanity. We see our military forces around the world, from Russia to America, trying to eliminate the progress which was achieved since the Great French Revolution, or maybe even earlier. This is a real threat, and we have to resist it. We have to stand firm, and we have to present an alternative. This is a tremendous responsibility which the left has to face. This is the responsibility of people who have to produce their alternative, and not only invent these alternatives, but also to make these alternatives real and politically effective. In that sense, we have to do a tremendous job, and there is much of this work to be done, because the left failed throughout the recent years. We have to accept the fact, not to surrender, but on the contrary, to start fighting much stronger, much more effective, much more successfully. And finally, I should say that here in Tarzhok, where I'm now imprisoned, we have quite a few political prisoners, and we all stand firm. We have very good mood, we are in a good mood, and we share the conviction that things are going to be changed for better. More, I should say, most of the people who are now on me as political prisoners, they are left-wing people. They share the same ideas and the same ideals with us. They share the understanding of the necessary social change going beyond the current system, the current neoliberal capitalism. This is also very encouraging that we see quite a few people who become politicized. They are really becoming politicized right now because of what's happening around, and their political evolution is very clear. They are getting radicalized, they're getting more left-wing, they're getting more interested in socialist ideas. This is an encouraging and important sign. You should understand, we are not victims. We are fighters. We are on the side which is going to continue fighting and will finally win. And this is something we should all share. It's not about sufferings, and it's not about the problems which are facing. It's about what we are going to do to change the world. The world should be changed now. Борьба продолжается. The struggle continues.
I hope it was heard well. So I think the essential thing here is that they're not victims, they're fighters. They fight the regime, they're being imprisoned for sense. The thing that I hear the most, like he left the prison with a fine. Why he didn't get out the country? And the only reason is because he's a fighter. There is no reason of his previous life if he just goes to the immigration and leaves Russia. He is still a politician in Russia, and a politician in Russia, a Russian politician could be a Russian politician only being there. It is impossible to be an immigrant and still a politician in Russia. From my side, I think my life has changed after his arrest. It was divided into two halves, before and after. The first arrest was more stressful because we didn't know what to do. We were like in chaos. We didn't understand what we are facing with. Also, there was not only my father's arrest, there were other repressions on the Rapcore, on his crew, of his media crew and Rapcore in Russia. So police came to 5 members of Rapcore all around Russia, like in 5 cities across Russia. And as you understand, Russia is an enormous country, and different cities in Russia, it's like a big operation to make this repression. So after he was arrested, there was a giant solidarity between the whole community. We got many donations, which thanks to those donations, we were able to create a big campaign to take all the Rapcore crew and move them to Montenegro, because I live in Montenegro. It was the easiest way for them to live outside the country. So it helped us to continue working with Rapcore. After his father's arrest, Rapcore hasn't stopped its work for a day. So it works until this very it works until this very moment. And Rapcore is a really great media which works while their main editor is under arrest, and they still can publish, and most of the crew is still in Russia, which is really dangerous. They still criticize government, they still write what they want, and they are still in Russia. So they're also they're fighters, as my father is, and as other political prisoners are. We had a big campaign. The international campaign started after the first arrest, and we had there were 2 pleas to Putin, like what happens with Boris. The first one was from the pro-Kremlin journalist Kolesnikov, and it was on the TV. And Kolesnikov asked Putin, like, what happens with Kagarlitsky, and also he asked about Evgenia Berkovich, who is also a political prisoner. She is a director in a theater, and she has the same thing. They're justifying terrorism because of the play in the theater. And that question was addressed to Putin, and Putin said, like, I don't know who Kagarlitsky is, but in Ukraine they kill for this for that kind of things. But I don't know who he is and what he did. That was the answer. And the second time it was again a sociologist from Canada asked Radhika Desai was addressed the same question to Putin, like what's going on with Boris, and they had an application with everything they want to ask from Putin, and he answered the same thing, like he doesn't know who Boris is. It was the second time when he answered this way. But I think that was still a success, because after those two questions, my father was released with a fine. It is still a fine. It was an enormous fine because he did nothing, and it's still like he's guilty, because when you're not guilty, you're just going free. You don't pay any fines. But it was like a big victory for us that he was released from the prison with just a fine, and he stayed in Russia. As we know, he has spent two months in Russia, like he said, winter holidays. And then the court came with an appeal, it's not a good decision to release him with a fine, and he should be imprisoned. And everything changed from the fine to 5 years arrest. And the first time he was in Syktyvkar, Komi Republic, and now he stays in Torzhok, Tverskaya Oblast, which is closer to Moscow than Syktyvkar. The first prison the first jail was in Syktyvkar, and the prison is in Torzhok. Syktyvkar is 1,000 kilometers away from Moscow, which is really far. For example, if a lawyer needs to come, we need to buy tickets to the lawyer, to the plane. So both ways. Then he needs a hotel to stay there, and we need to pay for the lawyer being a lawyer. So all of this requires a lot of money. After his second arrest, when he moved to Torzhok, we changed the lawyer, because there were no more other things we could do with the lawyer, just making with doing some statements, making the campaign. All of these matters, but not the side, like we could write more papers and then he will be released. That's what the first lawyer's job was, but it was really successful because my father was released. So after his second arrest, it was a bit easier for us because we already knew what to do. And I understood that I'm able to help not only to my father, but also to other political prisoners, because during the first arrest, I was communicating with a lot of people who are relatives, wives, husbands, mothers of other political prisoners. And I understood that we need a kind of community to unite us all. And that was a start of Freedom Zone. We decided that we had a calculation where we understood that to cover all the political prisoners, we need 5 million euros per year. And the amount of political prisoners raises every day. So we have a lot of organizations like Ovidinfo, Memorial, other organizations, but still, even if we sum all of our money and we donate it to political prisoners, there will be not enough to cover all their expenses. So we were thinking about other ways to collect money or donations and fundraising methods to help the political prisoners, and we understood that we need to make offline events all around the world where we could discuss this problem, collect donations, and this was a method for us to collect money. But it is really a hard job because we don't have any money for the organization. But we need to find locations in different cities and different countries. Everything should be free. We need to ask some speakers to cover their plane expenses themselves, just to collect as much as we can to help political prisoners. And now there is a year when we have this Freedom Zone initiative. Already we had I think we are kind of successful because we don't have anything, and we did a lot without anything. So we've had 12 events all around the world, including Canada, not only Europe. So I highlight Canada because for us is a big achievement that we are able to make an event another part of the world remotely. Like it's a huge achievement, and at the moment there are 70 people who are working with me on Freedom Zone initiative, which is a lot. No one receives any salary, and many of them have like 4 or 5 hours per day working for our initiative without any salary. So from my side, they're just heroes who are organizing this event only because of their belief in a better future, and their belief that their actions could help other political prisoners, and not just all the political prisoners to be free, because the only thing we fight for, as not us as a society, but us as a Freedom Zone initiative, we fight for the release for all the political prisoners. So our next event takes place in Belgrade, Serbia, on 13th of July. And then we'll have in Montenegro on 20th of July, and then in Vilnius, Lithuania, 26th of July. This is the upcoming schedule for our events. So if you or some of your friends are in the mentioned countries or cities, you can invite them to discuss the problems, the problems of the political prisoners. We have different activities on those events, like musicians. We have different speeches, debates, historical lections, different stuff. So it's always an interesting thing to visit, not only to help political prisoners, but also to spend a good time with other comrades, and to maybe meet new people to communicate with, to build some new connections. I think that is pretty much it. If you have any questions for me, I would be really happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Tanya. Thanks to Boris. That was quite emotional and excellent. So we have about a half an hour, a little bit more perhaps, for questions and comments from the audience. Just raise, yes.
Does the audience include?
Yes, and people online.
Chat?
Yeah, we can take their questions. As I think we have about 30 or 40 people online at least. So how do you do that from here?
I assume they'll write them in the chat.
In the chat. Okay, so oh yeah, we already have several.
I would say like main chat.
All right.
Let's see. I would say since we do have a lot of comrades in attendance, maybe let's prioritize people with questions.
Yeah.
Like for the presenters, and then I would say, yeah, raise your hand with a fist if you have a question, and then a regular hand if you have a comment.
Excellent. Let's see what we have here.
Yeah, a fist if you have a question, and then a regular hand if you have a comment.
So we have,
So
and that's the same online. All right, let's just begin. We have a fist back there. And please identify yourself.
My name is Bill Walsh, local town, in Hungary, solidarity. And work, not enough on political prisoners, but hopefully we'll do more. My question is, has there been ongoing or any communication and efforts and coordination with comrades in the Crimean left?
thank you for your question, comrade.
Yes. Anybody here would like to respond either?
Yeah. Oh, I see something in the chat. Somebody else have a
Oh, there, one new message down. Not seeing it. All right, and while we're looking for that, others think about any questions? Who would like to take on? I didn't catch your name, I'm sorry. Simon? Ilya, his question? No.
Do we have some connections with Ukrainian left? Of course we do. Yes. For a very long, for years, for decades. Yeah, and even for now. Yeah, we do.
Okay, in the back, then please identify yourself.
John, from Philadelphia. I have a question and a comment in the sense of a lot of our US left who have illusions about, the nature of Russia is about, Putin is some sort of anti-imperialist hero to them because, he doesn't like the United States or something. These folks still do a lot of like political prisoner support work in the United States in terms of Black Panther and Black Liberation Army political prisoners that are still in prison. And we have also political prisoners here in the States that were arrested around Cop City in Atlanta, those sorts of things. And I think this is maybe, and I just want to say, like, how do we break through these illusions about Russia and be able to talk to them about Russian political prisoners and standing up for authoritarianism and make the links with people like who we have in Jamal, who unfortunately has taken some pretty poor positions on some things. And how do we make those links?
Actually, it's a very good question because it touches the very structure of consciousness of those like anti-imperialist, so-called anti-imperialist left in the US, because I think that in their like picture of the world, there is no connection in between internal political situation in the US and position of Russia internationally, because they believe that the only imperialism is American imperialism, and Russia and their political imagination existed only as a unit, as the kind of state in the international arena, without any interest what is going on inside this society, what kind of class contradictions, what kind of political dynamics. So all of that out of exist out of their interest. So I think that the only way to break with this epistemological problem is to discuss with them situation in Russia as a part of global reality. So we live in a global reality where people, class contradictions, of course, they're quite different, but in the same time, we're all humans. We all belong to this world. We all belong to the complexity of its capitalist imperialist system. And I think that is very important work to do for American left, to recognize that their society is just a part of some global social reality.
Great. And then let's see. Simon, do you want to say anything to the question? It's okay. All right, we have Peter.
Peter Eudes, International Marxist Students Building City. Thank you very much for a terrific panel, and I think that we really want to think hard about what kind of solidarity we can generate here in the U.S. And if we all know in this room that one of the most important movements of the last several years in the U.S. has been the prison abolition movement, And I think the point here is that there is no probably, it's hard to think of other places in the world that concentrates the evil of the modern prison system that we're so familiar with in the US, that Putin's Russia. So I think this is a really important perspective to bring into the prison abolition movement, that an injury to one is an injury to all. And if we cannot agree to support political prisoners like Boris, who's suffering these conditions in Russian prisons, then how can we claim to be for abolition? And I think we should push that line very hard. But last, just on the question, Ksenia, is we don't have much of an active solidarity going on in the US. Do you have some suggestions of some specific concrete activities that we can actually help you develop right here?
Could you hear that, Ksenia? Oh, we can't hear her now.
Sorry,
So,
could you please,
just
Suzi,
1 second before, and for the rest of you, when you ask questions, could you come forward and put your mask down so we can hear you better? Okay, go ahead.
yeah, Suzi, could you repeat please for me, because I had heard just a few words.
Yeah. Okay, so basically he's asking, I think, if you have any suggestions for work that can be done here and how we can help you in your
Yeah,
work.
this is a great question. The first thing that's we are planning the event in USA, in New York. So we have a group of people who are working on this, volunteers. The date is not known yet, but it's about somewhere in October. This event will take place. So right now I'm thinking about, like, so many of you came to discuss the political prisoners problem, which is really inspiring for me, that you could also visit the event in USA. So the event will be in English, so everyone could understand what we are talking about. And about help, we will announce the event, and after the announcement, the main help is the advertising of our event to invite as many people as is possible in America, because I'm not sure is it a common discussion in America, like Russian political prisoners. I think normally nobody knows about this problem here in America, but I want more people to discuss this problem, because it's really important issue right now in the world, and this affects not only Russia, this affects the whole world. So we will announce this event, and I will ask your help to advertise it and to invite your friends, relatives, anyone to come, and come yourself, so you could and visit our event. It will be really helpful.
Okay, we have a question from our online audience from Leo Gabriel, and I think we can't get your video, but let's hear what you have to say. Then please unmute.
Yes, there is something which doesn't work with my. You closed my cam.
Oh, you
Oh.
can put it back on if you want. 1 second.
Yeah, hold on. There we
Okay.
go.
My name is Leo Gabriel. I am, amongst many other things, from the World Social Forum, where Boris, amongst others, participated very actively at a certain time. And we are including this case of political prisoners in Russia as a part of the peace movement, especially now in perhaps you have heard about Helsinki plus 50, the activities which are ongoing now. My question is, what do you think about including this particular case of not only Boris but the political prisoners in Russia together with political prisoners in the Ukraine, because there are several, especially the conscientious objectors and so on, and to make it really a strong point as a way to peace. I have noticed that, of course, Boris refused to be part of the prisoners' exchange, but there could be a possibility if we to reach out for, let's say, mainstream liberal audiences to get there if they say that it is not a unilateral thing from one side, but it is both sides that we are after. That is my question.
Okay, thank you. And are there any more questions from the audience here before we move on? Yes, one. Come forward and identify yourself. Pull your mask down. Okay. All right.
Sam Friedman, Memphis. I'm thinking that a sizable proportion of my comrades here in this room will be political prisoners within a year or a year and a half. And the question I'm raising is, how do we internationalize the movement to defend political prisoners in multiple countries, and how can we kind of combine our intellectual and experiential resources to make it more effective and more of a political issue that resonates with other people in our countries? Not of any good ideas.
Okay, who would like to respond to both questions? Okay, Ilya, go ahead.
So maybe Simon or Ksenia will want to go first.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so about prisoners exchange and political prisoners in Ukraine. So it's not clear who are exactly the political prisoners in Ukraine, but as far as I know, there are some people who were arrested mostly because of their pro-Russian sympathies. So I think that it will be a very just idea to exchange them and send them to Russia. And I totally support this proposal. It's a very good initiative. And second, second question from Sam is quite important, because I think it's actually much broader than just a question of political prisoners and political repressions. It's a question of the global tendency towards the authoritarian capitalist dictatorship. Yeah. And I believe that well, Putin is not an isolated case in this global trend. And we as the left and the US or in many other countries, we are facing the same global threat. Yes, so this is not just a question of defense of political prisoners, but that is question how to resist this new forms of fascism, new forms of totalitarian control of the elites over societies.
Okay, so do we have any more questions from our audience or comments? Yes, Ashley. come forward, please.
Yeah, I just had a question for Ksenia about the event that's going to happen in October in New York City. Is that going to be broadcast at the same time so people outside of New York City can watch it? Because I think that would be tremendously significant. And also, is there a way that lots of organizations can endorse the event, co-sponsor it, help build it, advertise it? So it's great that it's a live in-person event, but the US is such, I mean, Russia's a big country. The US is an enormous country. So if there's a way we can have it broadcast so that more people can watch it and understand and learn and figure out what they can do.
Thank you so much. Yes, we always make streams of our events. We have a YouTube channel where we stream all of the events. And I really want to communicate with organizations in USA. So if you want to join us somehow to take to be a part of an event, to make a speech on the event, I'm totally into it. So we could just exchange the contacts and discuss in detail what we could do together. Because it's a really good initiative, and thank you so much.
Do we see any more questions from our online community? I thought I saw Hillel raise his hand. Is that ticked in? Let's see. Hold on. If not, I wanted to, yeah, okay. Okay. Hold on. Okay, so I just wanted to also ask the audience, to ask our participants, because
it looks like we have about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we might be limited on question time.
Okay. And we will let people sum up, but I just wanted to ask others to, because it's such a big event that we had the letter from the 11 political prisoners that was sent far and wide to world leaders yesterday. I actually brought a copy of it, this open letter, and these jailed dissidents have called on the world leaders to include the mass release of political prisoners in Russia and Ukrainian civilians held in Russia, essentially as hostages, and there are some 10,000 people in all, to be included in any peace deal at all. And I said in the introduction that this should be our demand as well in all of our solidarity work. So I kind of wanted to get a sense if any of you have any notion of whether or not this is something that is possible. It's something that certainly the left wants, but that included in any peace negotiation, and we have no idea if there's ever going to really be a serious one, that raising the issue of political prisoners is something that can be realized. Okay, so Simon or Ilya, Ksenia, I think a question was asked of you first.
I think Sherry got that one.
Oh, you got that.
Oh, or about the event in New York.
Yeah, and about helping in New York.
Oh, okay.
I think she.
Yeah, she said
Okay,
just
okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Exchange contact information.
So maybe Simon or Ksenia.
Simon, do you have anything? Yeah, you could sit there for yours.
Yeah. So shall I come in now?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. So just on a couple of things that have been raised, just really to add to what Ilya said about, in answer to the question of how to break through these illusions, which I think are very common in the labor movement, and certainly we see this here in Europe, about the character of Russia, the character of Russian imperialism. I think there's no easy answer to this. I think Ilya's points are absolutely correct. I also think if we can get into this level of detail, I think the whole post-Soviet history is very, very important, because up until 2022, and including after the first invasion of Ukraine in 2014, for a long time, the Western powers continued their previous tactic with Putin and the Russian government, notwithstanding the increasing authoritarianism, which was to try to do business with them. Yep. And a very stark example is the attitude of the Western powers to the bombing and genocidal attack on Chechnya in 2000, just when Putin arrived in office, which was kind of a completely blind eye was turned by NATO. obviously the whole story in Syria. So I think I think that history is one very compelling thing if people really want to listen to arguments. I mean, I can say that the other thing that's come up here in Europe is that what we see from the European powers, and I would say generally from the US Democrats, is this support for Ukraine, which stands in such sharp contrast to their attitude to Palestine. I mean, it's absolutely sharp, it's absolutely clear, and in many ways, it's absolutely racist. We support Ukraine because it's fighting against an occupying power, it's fighting against imperialism. But if you go to a rock concert and say that you want to stop the IDF from killing Palestinian civilians, suddenly the cops are going to come around and check up on you, right? So this is the hypocrisy that we're faced with. You all know about it. It's obviously in the US Democratic Party as well. So, I mean, what we've tried to do in the UK, because it seems to work with our politics, is we have a banner which says "From Ukraine to Palestine, occupation is a crime." And we go on these huge demonstrations about Gaza, and we're really welcomed with open arms by the vast majority of people who are there, because they look at the banner and they think, oh yeah, hey, I didn't think of it that way. Ukraine and Palestine are suffering, we can't say the same, but analogous forms of authoritarian militaristic bullying. So that's on that. The second thing, just on the demands and the campaigning, I mean, I absolutely agree, of course, that we should support demands for political prisoners in Ukraine to be released. The numbers are microscopic compared to the numbers in Russia, but that makes no difference. Of course, that's a matter of principle, and indeed political prisoners anywhere. I'm a bit. I don't really have a view about the peace talks and how you can link up demands internationally, just because I'm a bit skeptical, and I think that a demand to release a political prisoner is ultimately a demand to whoever is keeping that person in jail, and that's the national government in whichever country it is. And I think what I believe and what I've put my own effort into, so obviously makes sense for me, is more practical support in terms of lawyers, in terms of parcels, in terms of support for families, which are desperately needed by political prisoners everywhere. We did this for many, many years in the UK in support of political prisoners in Ireland. We've done it in many, many different contexts, and we try now, working with people in Russia, to do it for political prisoners there as well. And I mean, unfortunately, in my view, I think that's going to be part of our lives in the world we're living in for a long time. So I think that practical side should be, we should not lose sight of that. Thanks.
Do you want to? Okay, so well, there was one further question from Wendy Goldman about whether Amnesty International was involved, and of course, I think to the answer that the People First Coalition has Memorial and Amnesty and other human rights organized within it, but maybe you know more, Ksenia. Maybe you
just one important thing that, and me and probably Simon already mentioned that mostly all important human rights organizations are now banned in Russia, and Amnesty International being recognized as undesirable organization, as many other international organizations like Greenpeace and many others. So that's why they can't operate somehow in Russia better than Russian human rights organizations, which are also kind of illegal in the country. But of course, their voice, their position is important, and they publish some materials on Russian political prisoners. So in this sense, they're involved.
All right, final thoughts from anybody in our panel? Ksenia, Simon, we heard from you. Right. Yes.
I just want to add about the law. There is no law in Russia which prohibits support political prisoners. You could write letters, you could make some events. It is still legal. Yes, there's some cases where you could be punished, but there are no cases of other political prisoners because of the support of the political prisoners. This is still legal, which is why I always say that if you do not be afraid of supporting political prisoners. People even in Russia still do it because they know this is the last way to say your opinion without being imprisoned. The last legal thing to do, I think, in the current situation. So, and for people outside Russia, it is even more important to support because they're even in more safe situations. So, please support political prisoners, free Boris Kagarlitsky, free all the political prisoners.
I want to thank all of you for joining us today and thank our panels and thank Ksenia and thank Boris. When you talk to him next, tell him how successful this has been. And we get from John Devenish, Bricks from Below. There is, oh, yes.
Oh, I do not know that resource, but
yeah,
Jack can check it out.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. And please let us know if you want to do any further work. We have a sign-up sheet here. We'd be very pleased, and we hope that we can help with the Freedom Zone and other activities, and also take as a lesson, because we're moving into a very repressive period here, and we know how much Trump loves Putin, and we may take some of these examples as our possible future unless we fight. Thank you very much.